We are off to the final frontier now, all of us. Nick too, off to the 25th century, and the cast of The Next Generation recently returned to the screen and finally reunited. They took their time bringing them all together, didn't they, for Star Trek Picard Season 3, 10 episodes that have been premiering on Paramount Plus and on Amazon Prime. Wherever you are in the world, there's somewhere that we can get hold of it, and this is our continuing mission to keep track with Trek and to enjoy every single moment, and then come back here to YouTube and chat about it all amongst ourselves to ridiculous extents, and yes, celebrate really what has been a kind of rebirth of Star Trek that, just like a couple of people have said in the live chat now, since we've been doing these shows, something that we thought we'd never see. So are you a big Star Trek fan, Chris McKeon? Because obviously we know you as Doctor Who, but did you grow up with Star Trek as well?
Yes, in certain ways. I think the origin of my fandom in terms of sci-fi comes from my maternal grandmother. And so I can remember going over to her house, and she would show us old episodes of the original series.
Yeah.
Star Trek has been a little more recent for me. I definitely missed Next Generation, but in that era. But I recently rewatched it. I certainly rewatched Voyager a couple of years ago. I've still missed Deep Space Nine. But it's, I guess in a nutshell for me, I'm kind of absorbing Star Trek at this point and watching the classic era for the first time all the way through. That I did that last year. So I am a fan of Star Trek, certainly not to the level quite of Doctor Who, but I needed some alternatives in the last few years to bolster fandom from my own personal fandom in certain ways.
I think some of this has a lot to do with our age as well. I think even if we've considered other things to be more important, there's always been something interesting going on with Star Trek, which has... I don't know. I mean, I found that when Doctor Who wasn't on, that Star Trek was a bit of a...
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't want to use the word consolation prize, but it was of great consolation to see this all expand. Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, the 90s, I when I think of the 90s, I think of Liam and Noel Gallagher, and I think of the cast of TNG and Deep Space Nine in particular. Oh, we've got somebody else. We have somebody else joining the panel. Okay, yeah, we have beaming in from an undisclosed location, which is probably for the best. We've got our mate Lee, otherwise known as Problem Being. Alien life forms all assembled. Hiya, mate. You okay?
Hello, yes, I'm very well. How are you?
Good stuff. Hello, you're just in time. We're just getting stuck into Star Trek, mate. But we're in the this is the engine room, I think, the nacelle room, sorry, of the Titan, the USS Titan. The Titan seemed like a bit of an ugly ship when this show first started, and people were saying, "Why isn't this all on the Enterprise?" But how do you feel about this, Lee? Has the ship grown on you? Have you warmed to it, or have you always liked it?
I love it. I've only watched Picard from season 3, so I can't comment as to season.
You're a wise man.
You lucky boy.
I know, right? It was a bit of a slog to get me to actually sit down and put my eyes on the screen and actually watch season 3, because I was just, well, why would I want to do that? But I was assured, and I'm glad I did. And the Titan, I think, is a beautiful. Look at that! It's a beautiful ship. It's so on the nose in terms of Enterprise. It screams Enterprise at me, frankly, and more so than I would say Enterprise F, frankly.
It's funny though, isn't it? How you can warm to these things over time. You know, just designs like this, particularly, I suppose, if they're based on classic orientations. As long as there's a couple of nacelles, a secondary hull, and a dish there, Matt, as long as it's sort of recognisably Trekish, then we can forgive it most things, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, originally I didn't like the design of the ship. I just found it a bit too bulky, but yeah, you get used to it after a while, and you know, there hasn't been that many shots of the ship itself. It's been mostly inside, so, you know, yeah, I've gotten used to it.
It's funny, we get used to new characters as well, don't we? Because we've all got to know the crew of the Titan as well over the last nearly 2 months. And
I couldn't tell you any of the name of the people that are at the crew on the actual ship, on the actual bridge of the ship.
Don't
except
make
for
me
Shaw
sad.
And Seven of
Don't make me
Nine.
sad. No,
We're very
sad.
sad.
there's still several characters that the names.
Oh, we didn't see that coming.
No, I'm
Yeah,
very
well.
sad. Nobody's happy about
Yeah.
Well,
that.
we've got a
Oh, I
death.
saw that
We've got a
coming a
death
mile
in
off.
each. We've got a death in each of these episodes we're going to be talking about. So we've got these new characters, which I think I've really warmed to them. I didn't dislike them
Yeah.
in the first place, but obviously we were all waiting for the return of the TNG crew because that is the USP of this season, and they kept us waiting, didn't they, for a couple of months? But by this point, by episode 8, they are all together. They are all assembling very, very gradually. The last piece falls into place in this very episode. So we're going to be talking about, firstly, we're going to look at this one, Surrender. And the blurb was, it's only been 8 days since this was on, but so much has happened in the last couple of days, hasn't it? So, yeah, this one, it says that Vadik forces Picard to make an impossible choice, deliver what he can never give, or watch his crew perish. I love that word. That's the kind of word you only ever see written down in blurb for TV shows and movies. Their only salvation lies in the mind of an old friend and foe. This one was written by Matt Akamura, directed by Deborah Kampmere. And throughout the processes of this, they try to set a trap, don't they, for Vadik to stop her getting hold of Jack Crusher, which she's been trying to get hold of him since week 1, really, hasn't she? And so the changelings are there infiltrating Starfleet, and they're all over the ship, and she's taking control of it all. Meanwhile, Will Riker, he's still a captive, isn't he? But his wife, Deanna Troi, she's come to the rescue, and hopefully this is when things are going to start getting a little better. In this episode, we finally see Riker and Troi back together, don't we? Don't we, Chris from Cultivated Media? This is the final piece of the TNG puzzle. So, how did you feel seeing them back on screen after all this time?
Well, first, I just one comment. We warmed all ships. There's one caveat to that, Dan. I don't think anybody ever warmed up to Discovery, but other than that, I think they're all very pretty.
This is it. I mean, there's no accounting for taste, is there? But yeah. Yes, with this one, there was people complaining, you see, that Marina Sirtis had been an afterthought, Chris.
Here's the thing about Counselor Troi. So whenever she was by far my least favorite character as the show was on. The only episode, whenever there was a Troi episode, I knew it was going to be Sleepy Time. So those would be the ones that I would I don't think there was ever a Troi episode I would watch over and over again. And Marina Sirtis is, without going into detail, not a very nice person on the Twitter. Her performance is better than it was. One of the only downsides, I think we discussed this, almost 2 months ago now, when she had that little cameo on screen with her kid, and then that was just awful. That was like a fan film type performance. But I did get it here, and I think one of the highlights was her little banter with Worf at the end of episode 9, and I'm like, God damn, we're right back. This is awesome. So yeah, I kind of rank Counselor Troi down with Wesley Crusher. I can take it or leave both of them. But I give props to everybody else, and I did like Data, and we're talking about Surrender, and he still does lore very well. But yeah, I think she was downplayed, but yeah, they had to bring her. And like I said, I would have been happy if there was no Counselor Troi, but yeah, we needed to have all 7, or would be.
With the way I look at it, guys, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'd have loved to have seen them all on screen from day one, but it probably wouldn't have made much dramatic sense. And there'd have been only so much screen time they would have been able to give everybody, wouldn't the PD? Yeah. So, it's one thing to have people on, but if they're there but not there and not doing anything, that's almost worse than them not being there at all. And I think Marina Sirtis lives in London again now. She moved back to the UK, didn't she? Oh. So you can, several, I think after the pandemic, because she lost her husband during the pandemic, didn't she? So I know she came back to Britain, and I suppose she could be semi-retired as well. I mean, I don't see her in much. I think she was in an episode of Titans, something like that. So I just think it worked. I think it worked really well. They did the same with Michael Dorn, didn't they? That we were waiting 4 or 5 weeks for him.
Oh yeah, Dawn's entry was good though. That's another moment I cried at the end of that episode. I have to admit, when Dawn came back and the Worf was absolutely brilliant. They didn't ruin Worf. He was perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
I must say, PD, that when we first started talking about this, mate, you were quite slow to come to this party, weren't you? Now to see you an emotional wreck here with every beat of this.
Yeah, it's a Robert Meyer-Burnett turned around and said, I trust Robert because he knows Star Trek. He knows Star Trek as well as I do. He knows it better than I do. He's worked on it. Turned around and said, give it a chance. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a chance when it comes around. And then Noel says, you got to see it. You got to see it. You got to see it. So I went, okay, I'll go and see it then. And
I found with the episode that was directly before this, the episode 7, that I think I said on this show that I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. I still enjoy it. Still better than a lot of things that were on, but I felt it lacked a little bit of the magic. This forms the sort of the second of a 2-part story again, doesn't it? The lights are down lower than ever. Everything's very minimal, very intimate. But I do think this one works rather better because I think the drama is up several notches. I think
it's got
the stuff with Riker
as well.
The stuff with Riker and what do you mean by that, Lee? Where's that in particular, do you think?
Well, I think because the characters, from what I've been told over the previous seasons, which I haven't watched, so I can't really say too much to it.
Just don't watch it.
Have been somewhat lacking in character. They are not themselves as they have been in TNG. But what I'm seeing from this, with the camaraderie, the way it's written, the way that it's been acted, and obviously the acting reflects the quality of the scripting. And it does seem to me that it pulls that energy together of the old crew, and that there does seem to be a genuine love of what they're doing, rather than just phoning it in. Okay, Deanna Troi, exception.
I think that might have a lot to do with direction too. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah,
I think the direction in this is pretty phenomenal, to be honest.
Yeah, I think what it has done is drawn out the performances, and it's also because of it's an ensemble again, that it has raised the game somewhat. It has brought them together, and that energy, that frisson in the air is palpable, and you get a better performance, you get a better rounded version of the characters, and and they play off each other and they spark, and you got that magic again, which is crucial to any ensemble piece, but in Star Trek particularly.
If I may add, I think that what we also are seeing here is, I think to a certain extent, something that's inevitable, which is the fact that these characters now carry with them nearly 40 years now of what audience expectations. And that can fail. They could come back together and not have the chemistry, but because they have, and also I think the real world element, these people are all close friends in real life. So they've kept in touch on the personal level in real life, and their characters, perhaps not the characters haven't kept much in touch, but they, at most levels of drama, our audience participation, which is what I'm really trying to say, they're bringing what you probably unavoidably lack in Picard Series 1 and 2, which is a new cast and crew. I'm talking about Season 1 and 2. New cast and crew that might have a back history, but it's all off screen. And you can portray that through the scripts and directing, as you've all said. But there is the lack of audience participation. We had never met Rafi. We had never met Agnes Girardi. We had never met Rios or any of the other characters. We have met Geordi, Picard, and so Data. We've been longing to see Data again. So to see them
I think what becomes clear when we're watching this episode in particular as well, Chris, is that these actors are now 20 years on. Yes. In their careers, they're a lot more seasoned than they were in the 90s. I never thought any of them were bad then, don't get me wrong, but I've always felt, for example, I love Brent Spiner as both Data and Lore, but he can sometimes be a bit of an old ham. Whereas, and it's okay when he plays Data. For some reason, it's sort of forgivable. And in this, he does it again, but I think he's a better actor than he was then. And I think LeVar Burton's, I've always thought LeVar Burton was good, but I think he's a better actor now than he was then. And so the characters just feel deeper. And I don't know if it is necessarily what's on the page, or whether it's, as you were describing there, well, both of you, Lee and Chris, that decades long, they know their characters inside out. The characters are them, and they are their characters. They would mesh after 40 years, wouldn't they? And so we get this manifest on screen. I'm just so glad. I think it's better late than never. genuinely believe in that maxim. It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it, PD? But it's true in this case, because imagine if they'd have never got the chance to play these characters again. I don't believe that Riker and Troy had this big falling out where Riker went off to go back to Starfleet. Somehow that doesn't really ring true, but I forgive it because the two actors sell us on it because they believe it, and that does a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I think if the actors believe it, then I think, okay, I'll meet you halfway. I'll go with that for the sake of the story and the tale being told.
Yeah, I got a feeling that came from Captain Kirk, actually, from Star Trek Generations, because Terry's a big fan of the movies. And I think he kind of took that and kind of worked it to Riker's story. Kind of works in a way, but
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, living in the old, living in a lodge there, thinks he's found the life that he wants. This idealized version of what he would find satisfying. It turns out it doesn't necessarily.
Exactly.
Now, here we get two Brent Spiners. We get him playing Data and Lore. I wasn't sure how this was going to balance out, but obviously as a big Star Trek fan, you are Bowles Trek, Chris. Was Lore a character that you enjoyed back on the original show?
Yeah. And I am old enough to remember when we first saw Lore in Data Lore. Get this, Dan, 35 years ago. No, almost 36 years ago. Who feels old now? No, I actually liked.
Why do you have to say things like that?
Because we're seasoned. We are old. We are seasoned. We're experienced. This celebrates old people. But no, I really liked. Two of Lore's three appearances on the Next Generation. Data Lore was awesome, and I've always like Brent Spiner is a great actor. He is hammy, and that's just sort of the way he is. But I think he does just the evil, menacing. Lore just wants chaos. He does that really well. So I love Data Lore. I love the season 4 episode. I did not care much for Descent, but I think it was a weaker cliffhanger, and it kind of undermined Lore, and it was the beginning of the undermining of the Dominion. But no, and this goes back to what you were saying, to how, and keep in mind, some of these actors have not acted in years. Like Jonathan Frakes hasn't really acted in decades, and he wasn't quite sure he'd be able to pull off the role again, and this is the best he's ever been as Riker. But yeah, you see the performances and how Brent Spiner in his modern day split screen, which I kind of like the tackiness of the old style split screen before we had computers. But no, you kind of see him playing off himself there with the two versions of Lore, and you could kind of tell with Data that he's a little bit, because he's playing an android, a robot. You could tell some of the mannerisms because of his age and just the fact that he's physically changed. Data would be the one that wouldn't really change, although I like the way they got around that. Sort of, they now have an old Data body.
It's clever, isn't it?
Yeah, the only things that don't hold true are really resulting in his age. But I thought when he did Lore, it was spot on. In fact, I think this is by far the most menacing Lore ever was. You're actually terrified of Lore, and then as you're watching this, you're like, oh, not now. But as I was doing yesterday on the TARDIS Zone stream, I have my little nitpickers because I do that. The one thing that I was saying to myself when they had Data and his little thing there and everything's going to hell, and then they go into the other room, I'm like, no, just bad things are going to happen. You have Lore in Data's head. You left him there. He's plugged into the computer. You walk into the other room. That's very silly. And then bad things happen. But that's But I like making these kind of complaints where you question what the characters are doing and why would you do that. But that's okay. It gave us that great scene, and I love the way that they kind of played it. And this is Metalis is an absolutely brilliant writer. I think across the board, and I can't remember if he wrote this episode or not, but he directed the whole thing. But the way they trick everybody, where it's like, oh, Data's dead, oh, we just lost him again, and then it's like, no, sort of the way Data tricks Lore, and just kind of breaks through those barriers, and then it's like, well, no, actually, Data took over Lore's brain. Then you see the whole positronic net thing, light up.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Chris, but I saw the resolution of that coming a mile away. I thought, well, obviously what's going to happen is this. But
I knew it was.
because it was played so well, and because I wanted that to happen, and because as well, I'm fond of the Law character as well. I remember that debut too, but I think that a character like Law probably has a bit of a shelf life, and so when they kill off some villains, you think, oh no, I can't, I could have seen more of them. But with Law, I think it probably is time. It's not, they haven't sacrificed anything that wasn't past its sell-by date, shall we say?
No, and it's I think this is a better send off for the character than Descent. So I'm glad we got Evil Lauren. I'm pretty sure at this point Brent Spiner has the record for how many different characters he's portrayed on any Star Trek series.
Yeah.
How many is it now? Like 5, 6, 7?
Those are some really strong genes in the.
I was about to say, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the Spiner clan, but yes, considering they've all looked exactly the same for now.
Well, they were all Sungs, weren't they? So
yeah, they're all Sungs, but I guess it's the mother's DNA never registered in any generation at all, and it's just like, yeah. But cool. So yes, no, I like Data, and I'm going to shut up now because if you ask me to go, Dan, I will go for the entire hour and a half.
Well, this is the thing.
I'm not doing that.
Because I think we're used to either talking about television that's really, really bad, or likely in the case of this, something that's really, really quite good. Then there's a tendency to either rave or gush. I mean, I suppose I did groan a little bit when it was Worf again that came to rescue Riker and Troy. He enters, we don't see him enter the room, we just feel a blade sort of slashing and somebody's dead. This is the third time they've done this with Worf, but this is probably the last time we're going to see them do it. So I think, it's forgivable. I'll let it go.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not, Dan. No, please. Yes, Patrick Stewart probably has to retire. But no, if this is the end of this, I'm not going to be happy.
It'd be a great shame, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Looking at this episode, I think the standout moment, the standout scene again. I mean, talking about things we've seen before, tried and tested sort of shtick. This scene where Vadik, played by Amanda Plummer, who I think she's been fantastic in this entire series, when she lines up the crew of the Titan and says, I'm going to execute one every however many minutes, unless you hand over Jack Crusher. And we've seen this in fiction so many times, haven't we? I mean, this is something that we've seen on screen, in science fiction and thrillers. In die-hard style thrillers, they do this. We've all seen these beats get hit many, many times, and yet it really, really works. And with the stuff thrown in where Jack is some sort of, what does he do? He sort of transfers his consciousness, does he, into somebody else's body, and so you're willing him to sort of hit the right panel and enter Picard's code and resolve the situation. And the tension, I think, is ranked up really, really well in that. And I was really sad, Matt, when Tavine gets executed like that in a split second, a character I was just starting to warm to. Did you ever get on board? No, because I remember week two, you said, "Who is that miserable Vulcan? Who's that?"
Yeah, well, it was kind of a contradiction, that Vulcan, but no, look, none of the crew, because they've not really had much to say, and that have really taken to me. Like, I don't know any of their names. I don't really care for any of their names. I just find them a bit flat. So, when they were going around, going the whole eeny, meeny, miny, mo thing, I was just like, yeah, no, I don't care which one you take, because you won't take one of the main ones yet. So, yeah, it just didn't worry me. But I love this. I love this scene between Data and Law. Like I said, the direction in this was phenomenal, and I think it's probably the best out of the whole series so far. And it was just a bit of a callback a few times to some of the things with his memories, and we'd been along for the ride with his memories, and it was and then when Spot came on, I was just I was like a bit of a blubbering mess. I was like, Spot,
No.
I'd forgotten about Spot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but the fact that he had so much, I mean, I love animals, so the fact that he just loved Spot, and you could see that it was part of him. And yeah, and I was like, oh, I wish Spot was still around. So yeah, but yeah, it's to me, this is probably one of my favorite episodes out of the whole series. Even though
because
it's not
because of that emotional resonance.
Yeah. Well, I think all the scenes were mostly. I mean, it wasn't action orientated as much, was it?
No.
And it was just more of a more interactions with each other and that sort of thing. And that's what I like. That's what I've always liked about Star Trek. It's good writing, you know. And like I said, the directions in this phenomenal. And then of course the arse fell out of it, but we'll get on with that later. But
don't be a buzzkill, you miserable son.
Don't make me take out Yellow Man, Matt.
Come on, bring it on.
I don't know how closely you've been following this Lee, and how you feel about it generally, because I suppose with films and TV shows like this, there's an element of the pantomime about them, and as always with a lot of adventure fiction, they're only as good as the villain. If you can't boo and hiss at the right person, then it's not going to work, is it? How did you find Amanda Plummer as Vadik, and how did you feel about her departure in this? Because she does, she meets quite a spiky end, doesn't she? Gets sort of frozen and broken into tiny pieces. So it's a very unforgiving end for this character, isn't it? And it happens quite suddenly.
It is. I found her quite beguiling. Hammy as hell, obviously, but that's never just a sign that it's a bad villain. It sometimes you want a moustache twirling villain, and she gave it all. The character of being one who was basically created from torture, which is throwing a pretty harsh light on the Federation, was quite compelling. Some would argue that that's not very fitting with Star Trek, but others will argue that it is, because Deep Space Nine, as Chris informed me, which I never really watched, I have to say, did explore the darker side of the Federation. And you think about systems that are in control, you can't have a utopia without corruption beginning to sort of form in some version or other. That's what happens in all forms of hierarchical structures. So that made sense. I thought her ending was, for me, a little bit of a shame, because I think that
me too.
I still think the Changelings have much more to offer in terms of the story, because we've got one episode left. Her and her crew have been disintegrated, but we know that the Changelings are in all spheres of the Federation now. So is that going to be addressed? I would like to know. What was the entity in her hand, controlling
It's the
her?
stuff with the hand that gets me. Yeah, I'd love to know, because the Changeling seems to, as a species, they seem to have evolved considerably, and we get a snifter of this, don't we, when we get some of her backstory, and you want to see more. And that was why I was so surprised that she was killed like that, and unless she does sort of reconstitute herself. I don't know. What do you think, that's likely, or do you think this is definitely the last we've seen?
Well, we know that Changelings can live in space, but I mean, she was pretty well obliterated and frozen for some reason. Might be something to do with the change in their DNA or whatever. But I would hope that there is some resolution to the Changeling storyline, and not just sort of be brushed under the carpet and forgotten about with zip bang wash whoosh and all the bells and whistles. So I would like to see some resolution there, or some legacy from her character, because it's such a shame that you have this very sort of scenery chewing villain just sort of obliterated and then sort of forgotten about. It just would seem a bit of a waste. So I'd like something to come from that. Absolutely, that needs exploring.
Because I wouldn't say there's lots of plates spinning in this season, guys, but there's a few, and there's only so many that you can focus on at any given time. And it was probably time that Jack was brought to the forefront. All the way through this episode again, he's doing great business. I think he's good at the intense stuff. He's obviously very, very charismatic, very funny, very charming. I think we can see but I think he's hammy in that Star Trek kind of way, in that kind of Horatio Hornblower kind of way that William Shatner could be, the way that Chris Pine can be. And that's why it sort of works. I think that's why Ed Speleers feels like a perfect hire for Star Trek. It feels like he belongs in this fictional universe because of its heightened nature. And that sounds like I'm dabbing them all with faint praise, but I'm not. I love Star Trek for doing these things. I don't know. It's
you talking? I thought you were talking to everyone.
Everyone really, but yeah, this is it. I mean, I think they're good actors, but because it's heightened, it's a heightened reality, and these aren't things that any of us will ever experience. And it's high adventure. I think for all that Star Trek is intellectualized quite a lot, and with good reason, because there's a lot of texture to these stories, and a lot of them are very literate.
Sorry. Yeah, finish.
It's still escapism.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you have to kind of remember that people do get invested, and they do have certain expectations. I think, which I think in any logical real universe, you would expect to be addressed, but because it's television, things can sort of slide a little bit. I do worry though with Jack that, particularly in the last episode, that he just willingly gave himself up to the Borg Queen on his own, and I just think, well, why would you do that? Why? For me, that just seemed a real break in his character. I mean, yes, he had a bit of a traumatic situation, and he's trying to figure out what's happening. Oh my God, it's the Borg, and I'm this vessel. But for him to just go, what was he going to do when he got there? He didn't have a plan.
Well,
it was very reactionary.
It makes sense.
At this point, they are keeping us guessing because they take their time in bringing him together with Councillor Troy, don't they? Because obviously she's the character that can stop.
But
the
her
torment.
character was inconsistent as well, because she's an empath, and she's lost her own children in the past, and you do think, well, she would have a bit more empathy, not just sort of react like she did and just sort of throw him under the bus, which is what she was doing what was right in terms of the crew and the Federation and so on. But on a personal level, her character has been very inconsistent with her past incarnation, if you like. I find her troubling in the way she reacted to him, if you know what I mean. It just seemed very stark compared to what we usually see her as. As
I think I told myself that that it wouldn't. I didn't want the Borg to be revealed as the source of Jack's torment, because I wanted something. I wanted something else. I think. I feel like we've seen a lot of the Borg over the years, and with the red glow rather than the green glow, because I still associate the color green with the Borg. Chris, I do, and so that they did throw me a little with the red, and the old doorway with the smoke coming through the keyhole and all that kind of thing. And they kept us guessing as well, didn't they? At the end of this episode, that's the big cliffhanger. We see Troy and Jack about to open the door together, but I think by this point I'd started to think, okay, well, Jack's abilities, they would seem to be Borg-like. I wasn't quite sure how, but it was near enough to what I'm used to seeing as Borg for me to think, okay, it could be the Borg, and hey, why not? Just one more time. I think that's what I told myself. Just one more time, it's forgivable. So yeah, for me, this one, Surrender, was a step up from the previous week, with lots of great moments. Stock adventure stuff, really stock moments. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like the stuff with the fighting, where Jack and Crash were fighting the guys in the corridor of the Enterprise. The Titan, sorry. There are little things like that pepped it up. But generally speaking, I did enjoy this, and I do feel like the series was back on target, I think. So just a quick survey what people thought. I mean, what do you Matt? You said this was probably your favourite one of the whole series, Surrender.
Yeah, as far as the acting's concerned, and and I just it's probably I don't know. I suppose this is all a culmination of everything. It's all come to, they've all just come together in this one episode, and that finale with them in the room
observation lounge.
Yeah, it was, that was like old times, and the fact that Data was there, which I didn't really think that they'd actually do Data, but they did. But it was just like old times, and you just felt like they were. It was back to the way it was, which it should have always been.
See them take their seats there. I mean, for the last few years, we've had, justifiably, there's been a lot of anger directed at the makers of Star Wars, the people who made the recent crop of Star Wars movies, for not giving us, to bring back old characters, not only have them not on screen together, but not on any iconic sets or doing anything legendary, recreating any magic. But here in these scenes in the observation lounge, I think we do get that with the cast of The Next Generation taking their seats. Okay, the set isn't the same, but the energy is very much the same. Chris from Black Glove, these moments, do they affect you in the same way that they do me?
Oh, I think certainly. Well, for largely the reason that you just mentioned, which is that my current fandom is existing to a certain extent being really affected by things like Lucasfilm, Disney Star Wars, which is missing obvious opportunities that we can't get back because Carrie Fisher has passed away, and it's unlikely we might get Harrison Ford back. I'm talking about Star Wars, of course, but when you see an ethos like this, which seems to be, let's bait and switch, tease people with returning. If you say you're going to do fan service, but then you don't do it, you play it halfway. Here are the characters, but in different rooms. It would be as if what would have made me furious is if, say, in a perfect world, you had the actors of the original series back. So you have, in this case, it would be William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley. Say the latter two are still alive, and you have a perfect opportunity to bring them all back together. But you say, no, fans probably don't want to see that. That was done better 40 years ago. We don't need that. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see Ilea from. Let's bring back Ilea from the motion picture. We really want to see her. Maybe some people do, but if that's your priority, if that's where your focus is on a much smaller character that not as many people care to see, but everyone's screaming and everyone's screaming and begging, please, can't we see them again? DeForest Kelley is just barely well enough to do this episode. No, who cares? We really want to see Ilea. There's that almost sense of aloofness and superiority, which I think has really infested, in my honest opinion, and decayed the fandom of the creators of Star Wars. We know what's best. We don't really... The fans want to see what we are creating now. Well, I think that this is an example of Star Trek Picard Season 3 of how to do it right, which is what fans have really wanted to see. And I think that the creators have probably been listening to the fans a lot, which is, can't you bring back the original crew and have them act as they were some years ago? Because we have had Picard back, but he has, certainly in Series 1, been fairly broken. Series 2, perhaps less so, but still dealing with his personal trauma, which it may be compelling, but it still puts Picard in perhaps a...
See, Chris, I don't know how you feel about this, because you're a writer. You're a writer of great experience in audio and prose. And to me, it's fine to break any character, whether it's a new character, whether it's one that's been around for 5 years or 35 years. Yes. But to leave them broken, it's only worth breaking a character if you're going to show their evolution.
Well,
either back to what they were before, or to take them somewhere else, and rather than just break them and leave them as broken. That seems just mean-spirited and cruel.
Well, bear with me just one moment so I can get. I think I can't think of the author's name, but there is a Welsh author. I can't think of his name, but he wrote a book of a series of short stories called The Tower. And there is a wonderful line in one of his short stories, since you're talking about writing, where he says, people often go out of their minds, but they very rarely go out of their characters. So they lose their mind, but they rarely lose their character. So when you can often have someone broken, but the mark of good writing is if you break a character, you are consistent with how that character reacts to being broken. And let's say Picard, for example. He tended to be someone that, he was very much spiritually broken, personally broken when he became Locutus of Borg and when he was reacted. But how he reacted, you deal with a good example of you breaking characters, the episode Brothers. Family. And you see Picard break emotionally, but he gets up and rises again, and dealing with his brother, which is surprisingly absent. His brother,
and that's all in the course of 40 minutes rather than 10, 20 episodes. There's a real leanness and a discipline, I feel, to network television as was. They used to say it was a sausage factory, and that was a bad thing. But I think with hindsight, it does teach. I don't know how you feel about this, PD. With hindsight, I think it does seem to discipline writers, whether they either helps bring new writers through working to that framework, or older writers, more seasoned writers. They're the ones that use that format. They can lean on that kind of format to get really creative with it and deliver their best work. I mean, Melinda Snodgrass being prime example if we look back at classic Star Trek. But it does seem to me that this season, again, it's an overarching storyline. Again, it's not individual episodes, but it does seem to me to be the case that with Star Trek as a brand, that with this and with Strange New Worlds, the success of Strange New Worlds season 1, that we've seen Star Trek, the custodians of Star Trek, go through the same process that numerous creatives had over the years. J&T found out this on Doctor Who when he tried introducing sort of the whole crowded TARDIS thing and running the episodes at different lengths and all that kind of thing. That sometimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sometimes if things, they have to find these things out the hard way. And I think that the makers of Star Trek have really found things out in the hardest of ways over the longest of periods of time over the last 5 years. And I'm just delighted that Patrick Stewart is here to be at the dead centre of this. And I think he looks so much happier as well, PD.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Not necessarily happier, but I think he knows he's getting good material. I think he was grateful for the work before, and I think he was doing it for the fans. I think he knew that the fans wanted to see him again, and so this was the material. I'll give it my best, but there's just there's an extra spring in his step. Patrick Stewart, bless him, he's not a young man, but in this he seems like he's got far more energy than he's had, actually, than I've seen him have in any project for years now.
Yeah, he certainly does. He was really good in this season, absolutely brilliant. And I think when you're going to talk about the writing, yes, Star Trek used to have a lot of limitations to the writing. There was a Bible that you had to stick to, and I think it actually did produce better work because you had all these constraints that the writers had to stick to, or else, what was his name at the time? Berman would set, and Roddenberry would send them back scripts with loads of notes on saying, you can't do this. No, the warp drive doesn't work that way. And then the current custodians started changing everything. And as I was saying to you earlier, Doug Drexler was actually talking about this. And he was saying, how he feels it didn't really work, putting it nicely. And now that Terry and Dave are doing it, he feels it's working again. And all the fans are coming back and they're loving it. And they're all crying over all the little bits they're putting in. And I just feel it's bringing the family back together. And I feel that's on screen, it's bringing the family back together, but it's also bringing the fans back together and the staff around it. Because the Akudas are back as well. I mean, there's loads of people behind the scenes.
I was there. We were looking at the graphic on screen of the Shrike there, which I thought was a nice spacecraft. It was a bit sort of Michael Bay Transformers-ish. But when they finally let those sort of torpedoes fly at it and the thing was blown up.
Oh, yeah.
I was there. I was cheering at this. I was sat there, I was on my own watching this show, cheering exactly the way that I used to. Not so much at Star Trek on TV, but more the Star Trek movies. That's what this series is making me feel, Matt. I feel like I'm watching a movie that's just 10 hours long.
Yeah, I think it's probably starting to waver a little bit. It's nice to actually watch a show that's most people are enjoying. That's good. I'm sort of glad that it's coming to an end.
You think 10 could be 10 could
This
be
storyline,
enough.
yeah, definitely. It's been a bit long in the tooth. As far as I'm concerned, it's dragged a little bit. So yeah, I think this is a good finale and hopefully a good
Good
send
cut-off
off.
point. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always say that this kind of TV is more than the sum of its parts. You know, I say that a lot when I talk about Doctor Who. I'm sure people are fed up of me saying it. I get fed up of hearing myself say it. But I think that's been the case. I think that's been the case with this. Lee, you've not been on one of these shows before. I mean, is this largely how you felt about it all as well? Were you slow to come back to it too, and you've been won over?
Oh God, yeah.
Is this the kind of storytelling that works for you, though, that makes you feel? Because it makes me feel like I'm 14 again. Does that ring any?
It does have that feel of sort of TNG. It's a lot more faster. It's a lot more in depth. I think in terms of modern day television. I mean, if you look at 80s and 90s television, it's much more set piece. You know, it's much more staged. Television was a lot of a smaller format. Now it's much more cinematic. And hyper realism is involved. I would say that I think one of the sort of the things that I'm not so keen on is the use of modern day swear words in Star Trek. It doesn't sit with me.
I think we've all been quite unanimous in saying that. Yeah. Do you think it's because?
I mean,
do you think, Lee, it's because? Do you think it's because we're in our 40s? Is it the fact that these words maybe for people younger don't have the same?
I don't think that's the case. I think what set Star Trek apart was that it had this almost aloofness to it. It had a sense of itself, which was set really by Roddenberry in the 1960s. I think that has been a run throughout, and it just seems such a very stark break from that. And that thing, Star Trek, it had a sort of almost a kind of paternal feel about it, didn't it? It seemed to me to be above that kind of thing. That's what kind of set it apart, like Doctor Who in its own way as well, sort of set it apart from all other sort of science fiction genres.
It's got its own rhythm, got its own language, got its own energy. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah, so that's episode 8 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard. This aired a couple of weeks ago, and yes, it left tied up a couple of story strands, I think, leaving us with what was promised as a 2-part movie-style blockbuster finale, which, I don't think any of us can wait to get our teeth into. So our review of the first half of that is coming up.